it just got to the point where it's obvious that we have an unusual candidate as our nominee. And I'm concerned about the Senate, the House, the state legislators, and the governors that are running. And all the money in Fort Knox is not going to be able to help them out as long as Donald Trump is supported and propped up and is the voice and the brand, if you will, of the Republican Party. So I think we've got to disassociate ourselves from him as much as we can. And what we think is cutting off the money to Trump would be helpful in that case.
It is fair to say that a solid portion of the illegitimate media, those who have the journalistic and editorial decision-making process of a sand flea, have been hammering away at everything and anything said by Donald Trump in order to make him look bad. And a good deal of the time, this coverage is based on misleading headlines and comments taken out of context. Then there is the legitimate media, such as this show on Newsmax, that seeks to be as honestly fair and balanced as possible and provide every single side of an issue and a comment, then ask about the potential success and damage of same. Which brings us to the Republican presidential candidate. Donald Trump is running out of time, precious time, to convince those still not in his camp that he is without doubt the only choice, that handing Hillary Clinton a seat in the White House would be disastrous, because early voting kicks in about 6 weeks from now, and the highest numbers being tossed about show him losing by a mind-boggling amount of votes. This means no time for any more missteps, no time for any more flights of fancy, no time for dropping comments and statements that can be fact-checked and cast another light of doubt on what he's saying and why he's saying it, and when he says something that can be proven wrong. Now, granted, Hillary Clinton is no saint, but her sidesteps and mistakes have been well known for years. Donald Trump continues to feed the masses daily, and the meal is not to the liking of Republicans who pine for a victory. We'll talk about this and a whole lot more. Pleasure to welcome back the veteran political commentator who can be read at ReaganReports.com, son of President Ronald Reagan and author of the book Lessons My Father Taught Me, The Strength, Integrity, and Faith of Ronald Reagan, Michael Reagan, back in action. Mike, good to talk to you again. Let's go ahead and get started right off the top with the whole issue about voting. Starting in less than 6 weeks, September 23rd in Minnesota and South Dakota. You've then got Arizona and Ohio, huge electoral battlegrounds right around the corner on October the 12th. Has Donald Trump got enough time to come back at this point, or is he dangerously flirting with not being able to make the numbers work for him?
He is dangerously getting close to that point in time. And I think one of the reasons is, and you alluded to it, his messaging. I mean, he goes out and he gives a speech this week on foreign policy. He gave a speech last week, on the economy. But then there's nothing to back it up. There's no commercials running. Nothing is running to back up what he just said in, whether it be in Michigan or whether it be yesterday's speech on foreign policy. It's said, it's gone, he's off to the next day. That's not the way you run a presidential campaign, and that is one of the reasons he's losing.
What about those, though, Mike, on the other side, who say that when he calls for a Cold War-style mobilization against radical Islamic terror and an ideological litmus test for Muslim visitors and migrants, that he is speaking exactly not only to his base, but to the people who are frightened that Hillary Clinton, and again, it's been said erroneously in the last 24 hours by some, that she wants to open up the floodgates for 600,000 refugees, which is completely false, but at least he's talking to them and at least making that case, which is what we've been asking. We've been asking him to stay on message.
However, he gives that speech, and an hour later, it's forgotten because there's nothing to back it up. There's no ad that's going to run now that's going to be pieces of that speech that he gave to, in fact, drum home what his message is. We keep on griping about the mainstream media doesn't cover him well. Well, welcome to the club. I mean, they didn't cover my father either. They don't cover conservatives. They don't cover Republicans the way they cover Democrats. So you've got to do it with your own media, whether it be a Newsmax or Fox or whatever it might be. But most of all, you've got to do it with ads, television ads and radio ads in the states that you need to win on Election Day.
Now, what you just referenced right there, is it fair to say that you use the phrase mainstream media? I use the phrase illegitimate and legitimate media. Is it not fair to say that you've got the illegitimate media out there? You've got to shun them. You've got to walk away from them. They're going to say what they're going to say anyway. And this constant battle with them on and off, back and forth, whether it's legit or illegitimate media, makes no difference. It's the wrong fight. People don't give a damn about fighting the media. Or wait a minute, Michael, do they?
No, they don't. Yes, maybe our side, the conservative side, we've been grabbing about that for 50 years. It doesn't change. It's a waste of time to fight the mainstream media. And that is what Donald Trump is doing. When he starts yelling at the media, he's off of message. And he is being baited into all of these issues that he doesn't need to be in. He needs to say, here's what I'm going to do with the economy. Here's how I'm going to make America safe. And get in the studio and start cutting ads that are going to back up what he's saying in his speeches.
Now, let's talk about Republicans and what they want and what they're going to be forced to go through. Politico today, voting for Trump through gritted teeth. Red state Republicans in the Electoral College uncomfortable with the man they'll have to support. And there's even talk that they may have to go ahead and put somebody else on the ballot. Frightening discussion. Now, here comes an open letter to RNC Chair Reince Priebus. We've seen these before. This is not new. But this is more than 100 Republicans have asked the chair to shift resources away from Donald Trump, saying the catastrophic impact that his campaign will have. Immediately suspend all discretionary RNC support. And if we take this then, Michael, and this letter to the RNC from Donald Trump, let's look at some of the numbers, because the polls are working against Trump supporters right now. Latest national polls, Hillary has a clear lead, as much as 9 points according to NBC News and SurveyMonkey. And then we go down to Virginia, which is called a battleground state. Are you kidding? There's not much of a battleground here whatsoever, because Hillary Clinton is dominating this poll. So if you put all this aside, Michael, I know that we've just hit Republicans over the head here in the last 60 seconds with a lot of bad news. What's the answer for those voters out there who are saying, come on, give us some news here. Donald Trump is still our candidate. Stop hammering the guy. What's the answer here?
But you've got to be honest also with the viewers. The fact is, when you look at the primaries, the states that were open primaries, which means everybody could vote, Donald Trump won. The states that were closed primaries, Donald Trump lost. And now you're starting to see it as we go through this election process with the Republicans, who are the closed state guys who didn't support Donald Trump. And this is what you were seeing. And the other thing that Donald Trump is doing, and I tweeted this out the other day at Reagan World, I said, attention, Donald, quit speaking for the applause and speak for votes. And I think that's one of Donald Trump's problems, because he is an entertainer at heart, other than being a businessman. And he's equating applause with votes. And you have to go back and look at Mitt Romney. He had something like 20,000 people at the last event he did the day before he got beat. It's great to get applause, but it's more important to get votes. And that's the group he needs to be speaking to every single day.
You use the word entertainer in there. Fox News has always been at the forefront of what we call infotainment, or newstainment, if you will, in many, many ways. They made it very popular, and they've worked at it over the years. Roger Ailes is the guy who was in charge of it. He's out now on charges of sexual harassment, which he still has to look at. But there's a report today that he is advising Donald Trump as he gets ready for the debates this fall. Do you think that Roger Ailes, he's got a brilliant mind when it comes to the media? Forget everything else right now. This guy created a media maelstrom. But the fact that he knows how it works, do you think that this is the guy to change it and really turn Donald Trump into something different?
If Roger Ailes can't change it, nobody can. And that first debate is going to be the most important debate that Donald Trump has ever had in his life. And if he doesn't show well there, it's over. It is absolutely over. There's no coming back in debate number 2. There's no coming back in debate number 3. Everybody will watch the first debate, and that's where he has a chance to jump back into the fray. But if he doesn't do well there, it's over. And Roger Ailes is the right guy to, in fact, get him ready for that first debate.
There's one last thing I want to talk to you about, and that's Donald Trump and his speech from the last 24 hours, changing his stance on NATO, and with it said there's a new likely ally in fighting ISIS. Here's what he said.
I had previously said that NATO was obsolete because it failed to deal adequately with terrorism. Since my comments, they have changed their policy and now have a new division focused on terror threats. Very good. Very, very good. I also believe that we could find common ground with Russia in the fight against ISIS.
30 seconds. Your dad.
Well,
Your
Iran's found common ground.
Okay. Here's the other point here. Your dad never trusted the Russians. Not once. So you can't. Does it sound to you like Donald Trump is cozying up and trusting the Russians?
I really didn't understand that statement yesterday that he made, that we somehow can be friends with the former Soviet Union, with what's going on there, Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin is the only leader standing up in the world today, and he knows that, and he's taking advantage of America and everybody else on the planet at this point in time. And for Donald Trump to say that somehow we can work together, no. They only work on respect. If they don't respect you, they will never work with you.
Yes or no? Do you think your dad would trust Vladimir Putin?
Hell no.
That answers the question right there. The book again, to learn about his father. Lessons My Father Taught Me, The Strength, Integrity, and Faith of Ronald Reagan. Michael Reagan, always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks so much for joining us. Coming up next, the return of the Cold War that we just alluded to. Whether we like it or not, it may be sitting right on our doorstep, but where do we take that battle next? We'll take it with your phone calls when we continue on The Hardline.